Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Chats from the Blog Cabin, the show where I virtually invite people into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today we're chatting about one of my favorite subjects, and that is wine. Who does not love a glass of wine after a long day? And we're chatting with Stephanie. And Stephanie, you have a really unique story about how you started your business, which is Fly Wines. So
Yes.
before we start talking about your business and everything else, tell us a little bit about Stephanie.
Well, Stephanie is just a normal, regular person that wants to live out their passions and desires instead of just living the day-to-day cycle of life. So with that being said, I did not start in the wine industry. I used to be in the tech industry, the ad tech marketing technology space, really wanted to pivot, had no idea at that time what I wanted to pivot into or how I could even make it happen. And I started to focus on those things that I really naturally enjoy. I always enjoyed learning about wines in my adulthood. And I said, why not go to that direction? Sounds like a great avenue.
That was a huge pivot. How many were there people behind you supporting you saying, yes, go for it? Or were people like, oh my gosh, have you lost your mind?
I didn't get a lot of you lost your minds yet that early. It was just kind of like, okay, sounds good type of feelings. Luckily, I have a great team behind me, one of my good friends, as well as our head sommelier, Giuliano. He's like a fifth, sixth generation sommelier Italian. I always say he doesn't count because it's basically his blood. But I told him about it and he's like, great, we can call it Fly Wines. I was like, perfect. So it was just kind of rolled with the system and the team. So it worked seamlessly. And that's how it all pretty much got started.
And it got started during COVID, correct?
Yes. It was started during COVID. How it even took place was unfortunately, idea took place. My mom passed away out the blue in 2020, and it really shook me up. It put that extra fire that I wanted to do with pivoting out and thinking about things outside of tech, and just sitting and having drinks with a friend as we were social distancing. She had some horrible wine, and I was like, oh, and the light bulb went off. I was like, I think I can do this. And she was looking at me very strangely like, okay, Stephanie, sounds good. Luckily, during that time with working from home with COVID, I was able to do some research. I really don't have a full explanation on the fire that kept me going, even researching all of the rigorous detail that it requires to even get an alcohol license, unless you want to pay a lawyer tens of thousands of dollars. And I did not. So I did all the paperwork painstakingly myself. So it was a lot of back and forth, clean this up, that up. But we're here. We're able to make it happen.
Was there ever a point, and you were talking about the paperwork, because I know paperwork can get frustrating with a lot of people. Was there ever a point where you say, it's just not worth it, I just can't do this? And then people were like encouraging you, yes, you can, yes, you can.
No, actually, it wasn't. At that point in time, because I was still in tech, so I didn't have too much of a worry. I was like, I'll take whatever time it needs to. It wasn't like we were really doing that much anyway, outside of working online and walking my dog. So it was easy to be like, okay, well, this extra time that I have outside of either Netflixing or working, I can just focus on this, clean it up. Luckily for me, I realized that the ABC people were very nice. So if I was confused about anything, I just call and just ask them like, hey, apologies, this may be a silly question, but I really don't know what you're asking for. How do I need to present this to get this approved? And luckily, people were able to walk me through that process seamlessly and say, you need to clean this up. This is how the paperwork needs to look. And I said, okay, great.
Well, at least you found very helpful people, because there's a lot of people that are like, no, the paperwork's wrong, and they won't tell you why it's wrong or how or what you're doing wrong, and you're like sitting frustrated. So I'm glad that you found some great helpers along the way.
I will say the alcohol, barrel control, as well as TTB, I found them to be extremely helpful if you ask. Now, you do have to be willing to open your mouth to ask. And I think a lot of times people are so scared to say, I don't know. And I, on the other hand, would raise my hand and say, I don't know. Please guide me along the way. It's just like anything else, I think, within life. If you come to someone from a humble state in a point of view and letting them know I genuinely just need some help, they're very willing to help you because they have all the knowledge. They've been doing this for years. Most of those people there, 15, 20 years, they're retiring out there.
Yeah. Do you think if COVID had not had happened that you would have gone into the wine business?
That's a really good question. I actually think I probably would have because I was thinking about my transition and how things were progressing. I don't know if it would have necessarily happened in 2020, but I think there would have definitely been, actually, it kind of started in 2021. So the first idea came 2020, started in 2021, formulating the legal aspect of things. But I do think that looking at like how I've always enjoyed wines, I'm surrounded by friends who are sommeliers and they always love walking me through the education part of wines. I always enjoyed it. I can see how I would have still progressed into some aspect in the wine industry, even if COVID hadn't taken place.
Yeah, I love that. Now let's talk about, okay, so now you've got your business, you've already applied for all these permits and everything to sell alcohol. How do you go about picking the wines to be part of Fly Wines? Because that is important. That's very important because that's your brand. That is who you are. And you don't want to put a nasty wine out and people go, I'm never buying from this person again.
Exactly. So we at Fly Wines, we focus on working with independent wineries from around the world. And those wineries that you find through us work exclusively with us. So to make sure that we're bringing in the right wine, we started from the standpoint of what do we want to do with the American palate? And our goal is to enhance the American palates and their wine education and what they understand their personal palate, not just general palates. And with that being said, we always make sure that we brought in wines that were somewhat familiar but different. That's our goal. We don't want you to taste our Pinot Grigio and just immediately, it's Pinot Grigio, it's a Chardonnay. That's not our goal. We want to focus on differentiating ourselves by bringing a Pinot Grigio that's slightly different and leaves you guessing like, wow, I've never had a Pinot Grigio like this before. That's our goal and aspect, not for you to just immediately say, taste something, say, oh, it's a California Chardonnay. I can taste California Chardonnays like the back of my hand. Buttery, that's just what it is. It's going to be buttery and oaky. So that's where we started from. And with that being said, once we had that point of view of starting there, we made sure that we introduce slowly different varietals as well as even some blends. So we have the same, maybe a Syrah, but it's blended with some indigenous grapes from those areas. So it allows you to enhance your palate, increase your knowledge.
So how long did it take you to find the wineries, the vineyards to work with? Because that had to be painstaking. Also kind of fun too, because you go and taste the wine.
I love that. That's my favorite part. I go out and source different wineries. I drove around Turkey myself to source the Turkish wineries, those hills in Turkey, and got a chance to taste the wines. It just does take a lot of time. And then we also have some different help, especially when different regions, like we'll outsource and say, hey, you know the type of wineries that we're looking for. And luckily, one of our sourcers was able to help us out on the Italian side, looking for exactly those niche independent wineries that have not entered the US or maybe did, but it was probably 20 or 30 years ago. And now they're ready to go back into the market and they're ready to work with us so we can build up their brand within this country.
I love that. Now, it's important also to, number one, to support small businesses, but to also support minority-owned businesses. Now, let's talk about that because I don't know if you saw in the opening, I'm not minority, but majority of my family is a minority because my husband's a native of Mexico. My girls are Mexican Americans, and my son-in-law is 3/4 Japanese. So we're I'm not a minority, but they're a minority. So why is it that important to support minority-owned businesses and also small businesses?
Well, especially within wine within itself, you think about it, most majority of the heritage within the wine industry is very white European. They're the ones that have been doing it for so long, for hundreds and thousands of years. But it's also in hundreds and thousands of years in other countries as well, too, but it's not well known. So for us to have that standpoint and to be a part of that 1% of people of color that are in the wine industry, and that's just talking about winemakers as well as producers, wholesalers, everything. So we're importers and wholesalers. We're less than that 1% within there as well too. So the importance is we're important in industry is to actually enhance and let people know that there are different wines out there outside of French wines. Turkey does make incredible wines. There is a great wine, a Moroccan wine. Oh, Moroccan in Morocco? Yes, there is. So it's one of those things, it helps with the education and allows people to expand their minds and looking at cultures outside of their own, which I think creates a healthy appreciation for each other in life. And we also see we are very much so the same versus we have much more in common versus we have in difference.
Did you find any roadblocks because of being a minority and also being a woman when you were starting your business?
I wouldn't say that was like any immediate roadblocks, but it was always kind of like, who owns this company? So it's like that, like it's surprising because they don't see it so often. So it's not necessarily a roadblock, but it's definitely a lot of surprises. The main thing in wine industry, you're just going to get a lot of people that are super kind of very much so too snobbish about it, which kind of creates that whole, they like to create the whole superiority type of complex. We don't co-sign to that at all. We like to create much more inclusivity around it. So, and then work on the education of that inclusivity. So that's our main focus on it. But necessarily any roadblocks altogether, no, but definitely you have those people that are quite superior when they love that superiority complex of it. But that's not something to where we co-sign on at all, because we're all about inclusiveness and building up especially the minority people of color aspect within the wine industry, because it's needed.
100% needed. We need to see more minority owned and more minority small business that pushed up instead of pushed down. And that's where a lot of COVID closed a lot of the minority owned businesses.
Yes. And you saw an influx of first, it went up after the unfortunate aspect of George Floyd, but then now it's decreasing. We see it in the fact of how D&I has gone away, that aspect as well too. But that also means individually we have to put more into being conscious of where we're placing our dollars as well too. It's just like any of the big corporations. If you're very adamant about not supporting big corporations that maybe do things that you don't agree with, you don't spend your money as much there. So it's the same thing as that. You have to be more conscious of, where am I spending my dollar? Is this going to go on to Unilever again? I don't necessarily agree with what Unilever is doing. I need to do something else. So it's more of taking the responsibility individually of being conscious about where you're spending your dollars, just like anything else in anyone's neighborhood. You have a corner store, you want to spend more money to the local corner store because you love that corner store. And yeah, you may shop at the grocery store, but you're conscious of, hey, I still make sure I spend some dollars there as well too.
That is so true. And I think the dollars you spend make more of an impact on a smaller business than it does a bigger business. Even if you quit going to the smaller business or quit going to the bigger business, it makes more of an impact to the smaller business because they build that relationship with you. Like you said, the corner store where people know you and you walk in and they know you by name, or know exactly what you want. And they're like, here, I saved this back for you, or something like that. Back to the good old days, I should say, because, you could walk in and see everybody. So that makes a big impact.
Yeah, and it's going to become more and more important, especially as AI continues to grow, there's nothing wrong with that. But relationship building and building that one-to-one connection is going to become way more important now than what it was before, because the AI aspect is eating up a lot of the manual aspect of things. So when you're going to appreciate basically the corner store a lot more than you did before. Because when you walk into the grocery store, nobody's there, and it's just everything is just AI focused.
Yep, for sure. So we need to take a brief commercial break, but we'll be right back, and we're going to talk about all the wines that you carry and some wines that maybe we could taste for the summer with things. So we'll be right back.
People welcomed me, and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substances.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling, they understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
And we are back chatting with Stephanie about wines. Now let's talk about your first wine. What was the very first wine that you said, okay, this is the wine that I want to start off with Fly Wines. This is going to be our signature wine. What was it?
I don't necessarily think we have a signature wine. We just have a signature palette or like a different aspect that we're trying to bring to it. So I would say that the wines that we always want to say easy to start off with, like we have a Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio is quite nice, and people think I have Pinot Grigio. Some people prefer it, some people do not. But our Pinot Grigio is delicious. It enhances the palate because it's from a winery that's located in Veneto. And that means they're very limestone heavy. So the vines have to go down deeper to get to the water. So you get a lot of those mineralities on the aspect of it as well. And so that's one to where it's like, okay, it's a great introduction because it definitely allows people to see, hold up, what I thought I was going to taste is quite different than what I'm tasting. Because people really like it and enjoy it.
And so how many varieties do you have in Fly Wines?
Yeah, we have about 15 to 20 altogether, but various different aspects that we put out and we put a part of our membership program. What we do is on our monthly membership program, we send you 2 varietals from different wineries that we work with, and that way you get to explore all the different wines from around the world, from these independent wineries that you probably never go to in remote areas.
Which I kind of love because you're kind of going off into the another country without actually experiencing in the other country, without actually having to take and make the plane ride to go across and spend all that money, and then you're depressed or you're like, oh, great, this wasn't what I thought it was. Whereas here you're giving us a taste and you're saying, okay, you can like it. If you don't like it, okay, fine. But here next month you can try 2 more. And I love that because a lot of times people aren't open to change. They're not open to trying new things. And I love the fact that you're saying here's to try from another country, because people are so stuck in their own little world,
exactly,
ready to get out.
Yeah, and we make sure we source and find you the best of the high quality wines within the regions that we work with and we focus on. So you're getting the creme of la creme, even if it's a varietal that you're unfamiliar with.
I love that.
I can't even pronounce half of the Turkish words on the back of some of the wines. I'm like, Toki.
So when you go and you pick out the wines and you're going to the wineries and you're picking out the ones that you want to work with, how do you go about deciding what goes in what box, what month?
We just choose that based off of the timing. Of course, when it's wintertime, we know you want a more fuller red. Mm-hmm. And if it's summer, we're going to start giving you some of the more delicate white wines, things to where you can enjoy. So it's mostly around the season and what we think you'll enjoy most about that season. So even in the summer, we do a more like a delicate red versus in winter, we're going to give you more of the bolder reds.
Yeah, I love that, which brings me to the next question is summer grilling season is coming up, and what are some wines to use for summer grilling season? Because I know we can also cook with wines as well. So let's talk about what we can pair with what we're eating and also what we can cook with as well, and kind of go from there.
I will say, starting off, simplified Pinot Grigio is always a great, especially the one that we have when we work with, great to pair with anything, great for spritzers. A lot of people love little summer grilling spritzers. And it's always a really good wine to have with cheeses, a lot of soft cheeses, anything you're doing like oysters, seafood. That's the wine that you want to have and enjoy it with it as well, too. So it's quite delicious. And then from there, I would say we have a Turkish rosé. It's a dry rosé, which is great because I think a lot of people are used to the bite spritzy type of rosé. And that rosé is great when you're outside just having a good time, but it's not the type of rosé that's good for pairing with food. And this dried rosé from Turkey is very delicious in pairing with food. So anytime you have some chicken on the grill or anything you have meat wise, it's perfect for that.
Yeah, I love that. Also, a lot of people can't get together. There's still a lot of people that are very like COVID phobic. Don't want to get out because they're afraid that it's still there. They don't want to get out around, but they still want to be around friends. And virtual wine tasting is a way that you can do that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, and we accommodate everyone that wants to enhance their palate, and especially those that are kind of intimidated about having a full bottle of wine and maybe they don't want to waste it. Like we offer wine tasting kits, and these are very small 187 milliliter bottles that you're able to enjoy without feeling bad from opening a full bottle of wine. And with our wine tasting kits, we actually work with Fortino Winery that's located in Gilroy, California. We partner with them within our wine tasting boxes. And the reason why we didn't choose, again, a Sonoma or Napa, because we want to show you these independent wineries that are outside of the norm that you don't get. So what better than to partner with someone like Fortino to provide very delicious wines and put them in for samples for you to try and enjoy.
What I love about this, and I love this whole conversation, is you talk about partnerships, partnering with other small business. It's all about building community. And I think that's important. Was there ever somebody that you thought, oh, I want to partner with, and then you're like, their values don't quite go with my values?
Not at this aspect yet, at this level where we are. Most of the people that we do encounter, we want to definitely partner with. The only aspect is a lot of times to where if you want to partner with, well, we have to look out for, like, Oregon has some great Pinot Noirs, but the only thing about it, Oregon Pinot Noirs can be quite pricey. And it's actually, if anything, you bring in a French Pinot Noir because it's cheaper than even the Oregon ones. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I've met anyone I didn't want to partner with, because most of the people that we are interacting with are in that small to mid business growth scale themselves. Mm-hmm. So they are willing to work and partner. And it's more or less us figuring out where the overlap is and where we can help each other and benefit from it, so we can expand our initiatives together.
I love that. It's all about community over competition. Instead of being in competition with each other, helping each other get the word out so that, their wines are out there in your little boxes that you send out, and they're getting your name out. Hey, if you like this, or if you want to try it, here, go this way with it. And you're also experiencing letting other people in the U.S., especially, because I think you only ship to the U.S., correct?
Yes, correct.
Experience other wines from other country, which I think is important as well, because they're often overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're really big on collaboration and community. We're building up into our wine experiences where we do wine and food pairings. We work with various different chefs, and we create a whole full experience for people to enjoy. Whether it's virtually, like we do virtual wine tasting kits for different companies. We send them out to their remote sales force, and we work with them and walk them through the tasting kits. Or if it's something in person, to where we do a full wine and food pairing tasting with the chef, and we walk people through our different wines.
I love that. So when you go and you're starting to pick the wineries that you're working with, like you said, you traveled all the ways. Is there kind of a checklist that you have? Like, first of all, obviously the wine has to taste great. That's got to be your first thing. But are you looking at, like, okay, what's the makeup of the company? How many are minorities? Or is it great? Are they well-rounded as far as the word I'm looking for? The representation of everybody in the company. Is it all just like one person or one race, or is it well-rounded?
Yeah, we are looking for those wineries that are, first off, have great wine. Secondly, are sustainable. So meaning we make the wine in a very sustainable type of way. I'll tell you the truth, most of the time, that's a bigger issue in the U.S. than any other countries. What we consider organic, it's automatically just natural. That's like a natural aspect of it. Then we're looking up the makeup of the company, how it started, the story behind it, because it is very important. Wine is very much so a social understanding and storytelling. So we need to understand, how did this come about? And we want to and focus on choosing countries as well as regions that are not well known. So like Italian wines, yeah, we have Italian wines in, but most of the Italian wines are not from Northern Italy or Umbria region. Everyone wants to focus on Piemonte. So, you know, you have the Barolo and Baresco. So that's what they focus on. So they're missing out on these other regions. So for us, our main focus is on the actual quality of the wine, the sustainability, how the wine is made, the actual makeup. Is it a diverse environment? We don't want to work on focusing on companies that are just so heavily male oriented that we aren't working or including women. It's just not working for us. So yeah, we work with companies that are all women. We love that as well too, because winemaking is predominantly men focused, males. So that's a nice aspect. And the Turkish wine, I said, it's just good to to interact with people that are from those different cultures and to bring in those different wines.
Yeah, you mentioned two things that I want to hit on. One is the sustainability in wine, being sustainable, and the other one, you keep talking about us and your team. So let's talk about what is sustainability in wine, because I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Well, just the way that the wine is made, you're not doing a ton of different additives. A lot of people aspect simple standpoint of like maybe they'll cut corners around the oak. They may use oak chips, or they may use other different additives to kind of go around buying and maybe an oak barrel, or French oak barrels may be pricey. So those are things to where they cut corners on, and maybe a lot of the farming is very much so machine versus hand, which does have an aspect of it as well as too within the sustainability form of things. So we look and try to make sure try to assess to make sure that this is sustainably farmed, sustainably made. You aren't cutting corners anywhere. It's just like different food you get from the grocery store. You know, they add a little, maybe they don't use real butter, they use artificial butter.
And then going to that point, you said the hand versus the machine. Tell us a little about that.
Well, like even the picking of the grapes. So you don't want, a lot of times, even like with the Turkish wine, they do hand picking. And that's a really big aspect. And it also depends on, you want to try to decrease the machinery as much as you possibly can. And some of these wineries are located on very hilly areas. A machine can't even get up there, so they have to be handpicked. And those are the types of wine that actually normally have a lot more value, because the machine just misses a lot of different things. It's like cutting corners. Now they've cut off maybe 20%. It's like you can use a machine, but you're going to cut off 20% of your grapes. And those may have been delicious grapes that are bruised, or anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's talk about your team, because you keep saying us, us, us. So who makes up Fly Wines?
Myself, and then we have our head sommelier is Giuliano Mano. It's my good friend sommelier. And also we have Talkmore, who works just more of the technical aspect of it. So we're a small but mighty team of 3.
I love that. You keep talking, you came from the tech background. How much has that helped you in the wine business?
It actually has helped a lot. So my wine knowledge has increased drastically since starting into the wine industry. I'm at completing my level 3 on the WSET now. So I have a really good understanding of different wines. But the main thing that has helped me from my tech background is understanding people. I realize that I may not have the full 10 years sommelier wine knowledge, but what I do have an aspect, which I've learned, is to listen to people and what they're telling me, because that's going to allow me to basically pick the wines that work for their palate. So if I'm tasting with someone and I notice that they're not into more of the fuller body reds, there seem to be more of, they like the Pinot Noirs, or they like more of the balanced reds. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just go a little down a little bit more. So I may recommend like one of our Turkish red wines that isn't so full and bold, and that oaky French vanilla baking type of flavor. So that's one of the main things that has helped me, is really taking the time to hear people. And even if you're a sommelier or not within the industry, if you do not know how to listen and what people are telling you that they need, it's not going to work.
I love that. Now, what was your response once you started the company? Because when you started it in 2021, correct?
Well, that was the official name, but of course it takes hurdles once you do the paperwork launch. So we didn't launch until last year. So that first 2021 was just a year of getting the paperwork done. Then we got our license. Then we had to change the license because we wanted to import wines. So that was another 6-month delay, which is start from the paperwork all over again, which was a lot, but we made it through. So yes, it was last year.
So what was the response to this?
It's been quite well received. People are loving the wines. Not only do we have our wines online that we offer through our membership program, as well as our one-off tasting kits. We work with various different restaurants and wine shops in the Bay Area, and it's been very well received. We're at the top-notch restaurants and wine shops, and they seem to really love it, and the customers love it, and we're excited.
Yeah, so you said the Bay Area, so you're around San Francisco?
Yes.
Yeah. My daughter actually lives in Pasadena, and there's a wine shop that's owned by a Hispanic lady that I think you should, I'll shoot you the info because I think you would be perfect to pair up with them because they love to have tastings and people come in. So I think you would be perfect to pair up with them.
That would be great. Thank you.
So what can people expect if they join your club?
They can expect to enhance their wine palate, understand where these wines are coming from, understand the notes that they get, as well as even great suggested pairings as well too. So you can expect to increase your own personal wine knowledge. So besides you just saying that you like a brand, you'll be start to understand, I like wine that's dry, or I like wines that's high in tannins or high acidity, versus just like a particular brand and you not knowing why you like that brand.
I love the fact that you just said that, number one, you'll get to taste new wines, but you also send the pairings with it. And I guess you send little notes about where it came from, the region and everything. So you're learning not only about the wine, but you're learning about the country. And then you're going, oh, I can take it a little step further and I can take it into my kitchen and pair it with something else.
Correct.
So off the top of your head, what is your favorite wine?
I can't even say that because it just depends on the season, the day, the time. There's so many great wines out there. I'll tell people all the time, but much more great wines than there are bad wines. Right now, I'm very much so into all things on the white wine. So I want a nice little Prosecco, a champagne. It's summer, so that's what I'm leaning towards now. Or I want a very crisp white wine, which is more high in acid. And just because it's sunny out and I want to enjoy it and smell the aromatics of the wines. I want it beautiful. I want the floral smells and I want to enjoy it very chill.
I love that. Now, what should people look for in a wine? Because I think that's important because, a lot of times when you go to these wine tasting, you have, especially if it's at a winery, they don't really explain to you what the wine, I didn't know that the wine had legs on it and things like that. I didn't know, are you supposed to swirl and then sniff instead of just drinking it like right away? So let's talk about that. What should you expect?
Just start from the basics. You want to start from your senses, your nose first. Wine shouldn't be enhancing all aspects of your senses. So saying, can you smell anything? Thinking about what notes you can detect before you drink. So spend a good 2 minutes, a minute or two, just smelling the wine. See, can you detect some smells? And the aspect of you want to see once you smell it, what you smell is that the same of what you're experiencing on your palate and seeing if those match. They may match in the beginning, they may start to differ and change. And you also want to pay attention to how long does that tasting of that wine linger on your palate. Those are very simple aspects to where anyone should do. Smelling a minute or two, tasting it to see if it matches what you smell. And if it all tastes, and then how long does that actual flavor linger on your palate? If it goes away, it's not long lasting, okay, but you still enjoy it, great. But if you maybe like things that last a little longer, I prefer things that last longer in wine because that means that it's deepening, and that means I'm actually also tasting different flavors.
Now, you just talked about palate, and I know people's palates change during their times of life. Something they may like to begin with, they may not like later on. So why is that?
I think also your palates change probably based off of what you're going through in your life as well too. Like I didn't used to like olives or anything when I was younger. Now I love it. I love warm olives, any type of olives. I just think you just naturally grow and changing your preference changes. It's like a lot of people may start off loving sweeter wines, but then maybe they're getting older and they stay away a lot from maybe a lot of sweets. So anything that's too sweet, they don't like. I am personally not a lover of sweet wines. That's not my thing, but I know people that love it.
That's me.
I just can't, like, oh my gosh, this wine is way too sweet for my palate. So I think the main thing is just noticing where your palate is at that moment within your journey, your wine journey, and appreciating that aspect. And your palate will change. I also think a lot of things to where you notice as your palate expands, things you thought were great wines are not great wines. You're like, oh gosh, I cannot drink this anymore.
Or like, oh gosh, I was drinking this all along. This is the nastiest thing I've ever tasted.
That's what you're going to start to learn as your palate increases.
So our time is almost up. Is there one little nugget before we talk about where people can find you at that you want to share that maybe you've either talked about before or just that something we haven't hit on that you want to share?
Well, just allow yourself to enjoy wine. Wine is a journey. It's a personal journey. And you're not going to necessarily like everything that everyone else likes. So a takeaway for us is we want to help you understand your palate and expand your palate. So you may love a wine that we get you providing, and somebody else may like, I don't necessarily prefer that. I prefer the redder, bolder ones. So I think appreciating and understanding, the goal is to not necessarily understand every aspect of wine, but the goal is understand your personal palate. And so you don't get convoluted by when you're in the grocery store and things of that aspect, because you know, I prefer wines that are this. I prefer wines that are high acid. I prefer wines that are more oaky. I prefer a buttery Chardonnay. That's your own personal preference.
Yep, that is so true. Now, where can people find you at?
You can find us at Fly, that's FLY, wines, WINES, .club, CLUB. And that's also, you can find us on social at flywines.club. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok.
I think we lost you for a minute. Can you repeat that again, where people can find you at?
You can find us at Fly, FLY, wines, WINES, .club. So that's CLUB. We're not a .com. I don't know anything about that website, but you can find us at flywines.club. You can also, that's our social media handles too. Definitely give us a follow, Instagram and TikTok. Yeah.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for coming on and for sharing the wines and sharing your business with us. And I hope you have much success in this wine business, because I think you're serving something that's awesome. I love wine. I'm serving something awesome, but you're also helping to promote a community as well. And I think that is so great.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me.
And guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere you can find Stephanie, as well as finding out more about Fly Wines. So until next time, bye guys.